Get out. You're nothing but a burden, a parasite. Those were the words my son Ethan spat at me the day I told him I'd lost my job. I had just walked through the front door, still carrying my bag, when I sat him down to tell him that I wouldn't be working for Catherine anymore. I hadn't even finished my sentence before his face contorted in frustration, his voice rising into a sharp bark. Why would you suddenly quit? That job paid $8,000 a month. What are you planning to do now? Just sit around and freeload? The little bit of joy I felt returning home evaporated in an instant. He didn't even ask why I had left that job. He didn't care. He saw me only for the money I brought in, not as the mother who had nursed him through every fever, who skipped meals so he could have 3, who had given up her own dreams so he could chase his. I wanted to believe he was just distressed, that maybe his wife Nicole's judgmental family, her mother a university professor, her father someone in local government, had pressured him into this coldness. They had always looked down on us. Nicole followed their lead, constantly belittling Ethan's background, his upbringing, and, more than anything, me. Still, I didn't fight. I tried to explain gently. Didn't you say Nicole's planning to get pregnant soon? I thought I'd come home early to help. Support her during the pregnancy, help her recover, and maybe even lend a hand with the baby. Nicole's face went cold. I could swear I saw her scoff. Postpartum recovery requires professional care, she said flatly. You used to be a housekeeper. What do you know about that? Her mother Susan, sitting nearby, didn't hesitate to chime in, her voice dripping with condescension. Taking care of a newborn isn't just diapers and bottles. It's a science. You need actual training. And it was like they had rehearsed this scene together. Their timing was too perfect, and just like that, I was disqualified, dismissed as if I had no value at all. I laughed bitterly to myself. Nothing had changed. In their eyes, I was still the help, still the outsider. But I smiled anyway and said, well, if everything's already arranged, I won't get in the way. Susan didn't even look up. Fine, she said, but you'll cover the cost of the nanny and the baby nurse. I'll handle the hiring and coordination. The words hit me like ice water. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, Ethan jumped in. She's right, Mom. You never should have quit that job. Our expenses are going to double soon. You really should keep working. That's when it hit me. I was never welcome home to rest. I was only welcome so long as I kept funneling in a paycheck. I wasn't family. I was payroll. I looked at Ethan and said quietly, I'm 58. I think it's time I finally retire. Nicole burst into laughter. Retire? You don't even have a pension. What retirement are you talking about? My heart clenched. Years ago, I wanted to pay into a retirement plan, but they convinced me to use that money to help pay off their mortgage early, and now that sacrifice had become ammunition against me. You should have planned better, Nicole snapped. Who buys a house you can't afford without a loan? Ethan raised his voice. Enough, Mom. Nicole's trying to get pregnant. You're stressing her out. This is when we need the money the most. You're still in great shape. There's no reason you can't work another 20 years. 20 years? The words echoed in my mind like a sentence. I sat frozen, hollowed out by a sadness so deep it stole the air from my lungs. Every sacrifice, every dollar, every sleepless night, and still, I was just a machine to them. I remembered the tears in their eyes the day I bought them this house, paid for with every dime I had saved while working as a live-in maid for strangers in another city. Back then, they had promised, one day, when we're better off, we'll take care of you. Now I understood. What they meant by take care was to keep me working until I collapsed, until my body gave out, until there was nothing left. I took a deep breath and looked them both in the eye. I said I'm retiring. That's final. And no one gets to decide otherwise. Their expressions changed, but it was already too late. The woman they thought they knew, the quiet, obedient, giving mother, was gone. I was still Margaret Turner, but I had finally remembered who I was. The silence after my declaration didn't last long. It was Susan, Nicole's mother, who broke it first, her tone suddenly softer, but her eyes calculating. as if she were speaking to an unruly employee rather than someone who had once helped raise her grandchild. "Look, it's not that we don't understand," she said, voice dipped in fake sympathy. "But you have to be realistic. There's no extra room in the house for you. You can't expect to stay here forever, right?" I raised an eyebrow, waiting. I knew there was more. "But," she continued, her smile sharpening, "I do know a family looking for a live-in assistant. Good pay, room and board included. It'd be an easy transition for someone with your background. You've done this kind of work before, haven't you?" Nicole jumped in right on cue, her voice laced with that familiar smirk. "Perfect idea, actually. You'd be helping a family in need, and the money you earn could go toward our household expenses. Win-win." Susan nodded like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. "You're not someone who really needs rest anyway. Going back to work won't kill you." I stared at them, stunned. Were they seriously suggesting I become someone's maid again? At nearly 60 years old? After everything I had done? For them? "I already quit," I said flatly. "I'm not going back into anyone's house to work. Not ever again." Susan's smile vanished, her lips tightened. "Well," she said after a beat, "if you're really done working for others, there's a senior residence nearby. Good meals, decent lodging. You could apply for a work-based stay, kitchen help, janitorial duties, something to earn your keep." Nicole rolled her eyes and scoffed. "Now that's more reasonable. You can't expect us to cover your living expenses. At least in assisted living, you'd be pulling your own weight." Anger simmered inside me, but I stayed composed. I turned to Ethan. "You really think it is acceptable to send your mother to scrub floors in a nursing facility just to feed herself?" He avoided my gaze, keeping up his cold logic. "Mom, be realistic. You've always said you wanted to be independent. Isn't this the most dignified way to do that? You support yourself, and we don't owe each other anything." Then, as if he hadn't just destroyed the last shred of dignity I had left, he pulled out his phone and said, "There's an open spot right now. I already called to check. You could move in as soon as today." I watched him start dialing the number, his fingers tapping the screen like he was ordering takeout. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Tears filled my eyes, not from weakness, but from disbelief. "Ethan," I said, my voice trembling, "I gave everything I had to raise you. I drained my savings to buy you a home. And now you're so eager to get rid of me like I'm a bag of trash at the curb?" A flicker of guilt crossed his face, but only for a second. It was quickly replaced by rage. "You think you suffered?" he snapped, kicking my suitcase over so it crashed to the floor. "That was your choice. If you hadn't divorced my father, we wouldn't have ended up broke. I could have grown up rich. You ruined that. Let me tell you something, Margaret. You owe me for the rest of your life." I stared at him, stunned. The room spun. He had no idea. The only reason I divorced his father was to save him. His so-called wealthy father never wanted him. If I had stayed, Ethan would have ended up dumped into foster care, treated like trash. Every sacrifice I made, every job, every tear, every sleepless night, had been to give him a chance at a better life. And now he was standing there, screaming in my face, blaming me for the very future I'd tried so hard to protect. My hand pressed to my chest, trying to calm the storm raging inside. But the ache only deepened, because now I realized something even more painful. Ethan wasn't even my biological son. He was adopted, and he had no idea. Ethan had no idea he was adopted. And standing there, trembling from his rage, screaming at me like I owed him my life. I finally understood how dangerous blind love could be. He called me a parasite, accused me of ruining his future, and in that moment, the years of silence I had kept for his sake, out of compassion, out of protection, began to unravel. The truth was, I met Ethan for the first time when he was just over a year old. I had been volunteering at the city's child welfare center, wiping down shelves and folding donated clothes. One afternoon, a nurse pointed to a crib in the corner and said, "That one probably won't make it." Inside was a baby boy, thin as a reed, his lips tinged blue from lack of oxygen. His chest rose and fell with frightening irregularity. A name tag hung from the corner of the crib, Baby Doe. I walked closer, and something in his eyes, big, dark, frightened, locked onto mine. I didn't know then what it was. Pity? A maternal instinct I didn't know I had? Or perhaps it was something deeper, something invisible and binding. The director pulled me aside. Congenital heart defect, she explained. He was abandoned in a dumpster after birth. A passerby heard crying and brought him in. His parents never came back. I went home that night, heart twisted, and spoke to my husband. After days of quiet, painful conversation, we filed for adoption. But Ethan's condition didn't improve easily. The next 2 years were an endless marathon of hospital visits, medication schedules, late-night fevers, and medical bills that drowned us. My husband, who initially agreed to adopt out of pity, began to change. One night, he sat me down and said, "I want my own child, not someone else's." He gave me an ultimatum. Either we return Ethan to the system, or you leave with him. I didn't hesitate. I packed our things and walked out of that marriage with no job, no plan, just a toddler in my arms and a heart braced for the storm ahead. We moved from place to place. I worked double shifts, waitressing in the mornings, cleaning houses at night. I crafted handmade trinkets to sell at flea markets. I slept barely 3 hours a night. And still, I never once regretted choosing Ethan. He grew stronger. His condition stabilized. He learned to laugh, to run, to call me Mama. And through it all, I never told him, never wanted him to feel like he was second best, never wanted him to believe he had been thrown away twice, once by the world, and again by his own truth. But now, watching him spit venom at me, twisting my love into guilt, my sacrifices into debts, I knew I had made a mistake, not in adopting him, but in shielding him from reality for far too long. He believed he had a right to everything I owned, that I existed to serve him. I looked at him now, red-faced, eyes wild, veins bulging in his neck, and realized for the first time I didn't recognize the boy I had raised. And yet, a flicker of something else stirred within me. Relief. Thank God I hadn't told him about the inheritance. He had no idea that the woman I worked for, Catherine, the one I had loyally served for 15 years, had quietly left me over $8 million in a trust after her passing. She had no children, no husband, but she had always treated me like family. If Ethan had known about that money, I shuddered to think what he and Nicole might have done. No, the secret was safe, at least for now. I stood straighter, my voice steady and colder than it had ever been. If this is the kind of heartless man you've become, then so be it. From this moment on, you and I have nothing to do with each other. I reached down, picked up my overturned suitcase, and turned toward the door. But just as I reached the threshold, Susan grabbed my arm. "What are you saying? That's your son. You're supposed to be responsible for his future." Nicole stepped in too, eyes blazing. "Yeah! What kind of mother just walks out? You raised him, and now you want to wash your hands of everything? That's unbelievable." I looked at them both and gave a bitter laugh. "You're a college professor," I said to Susan. "Educated, and yet you think motherhood is a life sentence." Then I turned to Nicole. Legally, a parent is obligated to care for a child until they turn 18. Ethan is 30. I've fulfilled my duty. What more do you want? My blood? Ethan's voice cut through the tension like a whip. You made bad choices. Everything bad in my life is because of you. You owe me forever. Then he screamed, "Did you ask for my permission when you decided to bring me into this world?" For a moment, I nearly laughed at the absurdity. He sounded completely unhinged, twisted by entitlement and rage. I stared at him, this grown man who once needed heart surgery to live. I had loved him with everything I had, and in return, he tried to erase my worth. That night, I didn't sleep, but I didn't cry either. I was done being the one who begged to stay. I walked out of the house I had bought with every dollar I'd ever earned, suitcase in hand, heart in pieces, but my spine was straighter than ever before. Behind me, I could still hear them shouting, "You're abandoning your own son! You're not even human! Let's see how far that independence gets you when no one wants to care for a woman your age." Susan's voice was shrill with panic now. No one will hire you. When you hit rock bottom, don't come crawling back. I turned back slowly. My voice was calm, detached. You should be more worried about yourselves. They froze. I looked directly at Nicole. Don't forget, the house you live in, that house you treat like your birthright, I paid for it, every penny, scrubbed toilets and mopped floors for 15 years to afford it. Nicole's face twisted in rage. Don't you dare touch this house. It's in my and Ethan's names. It's legally ours. You have no claim. I stared at her, letting my silence speak louder than any scream could. Fine, I said, then listen closely. I don't care if I have to spend the price of 2 houses. I will not let that home stay in the hands of 2 ungrateful leeches. Nicole burst out laughing, the sound high-pitched and mocking. You've lost your mind. You probably don't even have $1,000 to your name. This house is ours. You're just some washed-up maid trying to bite off more than you can chew. Get lost. Sut. Then she slammed the door in my face. I didn't flinch. I didn't knock. I didn't say another word. I just turned, walked to the elevator, and pulled out my phone. If I didn't move into the best house in town, I thought, I'd be doing a disservice to the $8 million comfortably resting in my trust fund. That night, I checked into the most exclusive 5-star hotel downtown. The staff greeted me by name. My suite overlooked the city skyline. It smelled like leather and jasmine. For the first time in decades, I let myself exhale. The next morning, I called Catherine's private attorney. It's time, I said. Initiate legal proceedings. I want everything that was stolen from me back. Over the next few days, I lived quietly in the hotel while meeting with real estate agents, reviewing properties, and plotting my next move. I kept my name off public records for now. Let them think I had disappeared. Let them whisper that I was broke, that I'd come crawling back. I had no intention of correcting them. A week later, I made an appointment to view a gated luxury villa community, one of the most prestigious developments in the city. Multi-million-dollar listings, marble floors, private elevators, and concierge services. I arrived early and walked into the sales center, dressed simply but elegantly. As I approached the reception desk, a young woman greeted me warmly. Good afternoon, ma'am. Would you like to view the model homes? Yes, I replied. Please. We had barely taken a few steps when a loud voice rang out from across the room. Who's handling client screening today? Are we just letting anyone walk in now? I looked up and nearly laughed. There she was, Chloe, Susan's niece, Nicole's cousin. We had met a few times at family gatherings. She always acted like she was better than everyone else, always talking about how she only worked with real clients, the kind who wore designer shoes and drove European cars. She strutted over, her heels clicking like gavel strikes. Margaret, she sneered, what are you doing here? I'm here to view a property, I said evenly. Is that a problem? She stepped directly in front of me, arms folded. A housekeeper? You think you can afford this place? Don't tell me you're here for the free snacks. People around us started whispering, their eyes darting between us. The young sales assistant tried to intervene. Chloe, I can take this client. But Chloe shoved her aside. You don't tell me how to do my job. Then she turned back to me and waved over 2 security guards. Escort her out, she said. Now. The room fell silent. All eyes were on me. I raised my hand gently, stopping the guards in their tracks. I came here to view a property, I said, my voice cool. On what grounds are you kicking me out? Where's your manager? At that moment, a man in a crisp white shirt approached quickly. I'm Alex, the sales manager. Is there a problem? Chloe jumped in. She's just here for the freebies. I was about to have her removed. Alex looked at me, then back at Chloe. Ma'am, he said politely, would you mind showing proof of purchasing ability? This is an invitation-only showcase. I nodded, calm as ever. No problem. I pulled out a folder, bank statements, investment records, trust documents. Chloe grabbed it and flipped it open dramatically, ready to scoff. But her jaw dropped. $5 million. Confirmed. Her face turned from red to pale to ghost white. And I hadn't even pulled out my phone yet, which, by the way, showed a balance of over $8 million. Suddenly, the whispers in the room changed. Damn, she's got serious money. Who is she? Chloe stammered. This has to be fake. Alex's expression turned firm. Chloe, that's enough. Ma'am, we deeply apologize. We'll assign you our best client manager. I smiled and pointed to the assistant Chloe had shoved aside. She's perfect. I want her to show me the property. Chloe's jaw clenched. I could see the fire burning in her eyes. Let it burn. This was just the beginning. Chloe stood to the side, her jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth might crack. She had just mocked me in front of a room full of strangers, accused me of pretending, of chasing free snacks, and now she was forced to watch me be escorted toward the model villas like a VIP guest. I could hear whispers trail behind me. She has over 8 million in her account. And Chloe said she was a maid? The young assistant, Monica her name was, walked beside me, her hands still shaking slightly from the earlier scene. I'm so sorry about what happened, she said softly. I smiled. You did nothing wrong. You handled yourself with grace. That's more than I can say for others. She smiled back, eyes shining with relief and something else, respect. We reached the villa showroom, marble floors, vaulted ceilings, a sunroom drenched in golden light, French doors that opened to a private garden wrapped in blooming hydrangeas and rose bushes. I walked through each room slowly, breathing in the silence, the possibility. When we reached the master bedroom, I turned to Monica. I'll take it. She blinked. Just like that? No need to see more, I said. This one feels like peace. Monica laughed a little breathlessly. This will be my first sale. You're my lucky charm. We returned to the signing room, where Alex waited with a contract and complimentary bottle of champagne. As I began signing, a murmur passed through the room behind me. She signed without even blinking. 150,000 down just like that. Maybe she is rich. But of course, the doubt hadn't fully disappeared. Chloe couldn't resist one more shot. She stood nearby, arms crossed, and called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. She's just a glorified maid pretending to be someone she's not. Probably flashing someone else's money. The crowd stirred again. One woman muttered, Seriously, what kind of employer gives a maid millions? Another hissed, She probably earned it by keeping more than the house clean, if you catch my drift. My hand paused on the final signature. Then I calmly stood up and said, Monica, could you get Alex again? I'd like to buy another property. The room fell completely silent. Monica's eyes widened. Another one? That's right. One to live in, one as an investment. Alex returned moments later, practically glowing. How can I assist? I'm ready to sign for a second villa, I told him. But before I do, I'd like to request that your team properly address the behavior of certain staff members. His face turned serious. His eyes landed on Chloe like a hawk spotting a rabbit. Chloe, he said sharply, apologize to the client. Now. Chloe scoffed. Why should I? I told the truth. She used to be a housekeeper, one of those live-in types who cater to rich old men. Her son told me. I turned to her slowly, my voice low and cold. Is that what my son said? Then let me tell you something. I leaned in slightly. He also once said that your portfolio of sales didn't come from skill, but from the nights you spent in bed with clients. Is that true? The color drained from Chloe's face. You're lying. That's slander. I shrugged. Didn't you just slander me a few minutes ago? Now you suddenly care about truth? Alex didn't need another cue. Chloe, you've violated our company's conduct policies. You're terminated, effective immediately. Security, please escort her out. Chloe began crying, begging, swearing she didn't mean it. But it was too late. She was dragged away, still shouting, She's lying! She's just a maid! A fake! I held up my phone calmly. Wait, she's not going anywhere yet? Alex turned. Ma'am? I'd like to file a formal report for defamation and harassment. 10 minutes later, the police arrived. It was the same 2 officers from the day I reclaimed my home's legal rights. They took my statement. Chloe received a formal warning. If she didn't apologize publicly, I had the right to press charges. Cornered, humiliated, and sobbing, Chloe finally muttered, I'm sorry. Then she stormed out, past Monica, who now stood at my side with her head high. By the end of the day, both contracts were signed. I had bought 2 villas in cash. Monica looked like she could hardly breathe from joy. "I've worked here for 3 months and never closed a sale," she whispered. "You gave me 2 in one day." I smiled gently. "Then let's get started with the moving prep, shall we?" That evening, I returned to my suite, not with vengeance in my heart, but peace in my bones. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything. And when my phone rang an hour later, I wasn't surprised to see the name flash across the screen. Ethan. That evening, just as I was sipping my tea by the window of my hotel suite, the front desk called up. "Miss Turner," the concierge said, "there's a delivery for you, a very large bouquet. No name on the card, but it was dropped off at the gate." I already knew who it was from. Still, I walked down, accepted the bouquet, and brought it upstairs. The moment I opened the wrapping, a small card fluttered out. "Wishing you a lovely weekend. Love, your son, Ethan." For a second, I laughed, not from joy, but disbelief. This was the same man who had kicked over my suitcase, screamed that I had ruined his life, and practically shoved me out the door like a stray animal. And now, flowers? I tossed the entire bouquet into the kitchen trash can. The card, crushed beneath the weight of stems and petals, felt like poetic justice. I snapped a picture of it, the mangled bouquet and the crumpled note, and sent it to the hotel's gatehouse. From now on, refuse anything from this sender. Also, forward him this photo. I didn't just want him denied. I wanted him to know he was no longer welcome in my world. The flowers stopped, but Ethan didn't. For the next 2 weeks, he waited outside the gated community where my new villas were located. Rain or shine, weekday or weekend, he'd be there, lurking just outside the guard post, sometimes holding a sign, other times just staring at passing cars. One day, he even dropped to his knees on the sidewalk, sobbing loudly enough to attract attention from other residents. "Mom!" he wailed. "Please don't be mad anymore. I was wrong. Come home. Please. I miss you. I need you. You're still my mother." I didn't stop. I didn't roll down the window. I didn't even glance his way. That same afternoon, I hired a full-time driver. Every day, I sat quietly in the back of the sleek black sedan, the tinted windows ensuring I never had to see Ethan's theatrics again. I didn't owe him a performance, not anymore. Eventually, the dramatics faded. The tears dried up. The signs disappeared. And just when I thought he might finally let go, he changed tactics. He went digging. Somehow, Ethan tracked down my ex-husband, Richard, the man who had once given me an ultimatum, him or Ethan. I hadn't spoken to Richard in over 2 decades, so when his number flashed on my phone, I almost didn't pick up. Curiosity got the better of me. "Hello?" His voice was surprisingly calm. "Linda, just thought you should know. Ethan found me." I stayed silent. He showed up at my office, made a huge scene, cried, begged, said he just wanted you back, claimed you were being manipulated, said you'd gone mad. I sighed. "And what did you say?" I told him I wasn't his biological father. I reminded him that I had no legal or emotional ties to him, that I wasn't part of your life or his. But he didn't believe me, insisted I was lying. Richard hesitated for a moment, then continued. "He forced me to take a paternity test. I did. Obviously, I wasn't a match, but I didn't tell him the rest. I didn't say anything about the dumpster, or the surgeries, or the adoption papers. I kept your promise." That promise. We'd made it years ago, back when Ethan was still just a fragile little boy, clinging to life after another heart episode. I had begged Richard not to ever tell Ethan the truth, no matter what. I wanted him to grow up with a sense of belonging, not abandonment. But now, everything was unraveling. Richard hung up soon after. "Good luck," he said softly. "I have a feeling he's not finished." And I knew he was right, because Ethan wasn't trying to rebuild a relationship. He was trying to control me. If he couldn't use love or guilt to pull me back, he'd use public pressure, pity, even shame. What I didn't expect was how far he'd go, or how many strangers he'd convince. Just a few days later, Monica called me with a trembling voice. Linda, I just wanted to say, I know who you are. I trust you. Please don't let what they're saying get to you. What are they saying? She hesitated. Just go online. I think you should see it for yourself. I opened my laptop, typed in his name, and there it was. Ethan had started a live stream channel, a viral, fast-growing one. Its title? How My Mother Abandoned Me. The live stream was everywhere. How My Mother Abandoned Me had become a viral sensation. Ethan sat in front of a camera, eyes red, voice trembling just enough to seem believable. He painted himself as the perfect son, heartbroken, betrayed, misunderstood. She never really loved me, he said, his voice low. She left me alone in a rental apartment when I was still in college. She worked for rich people in another city while I barely scraped by. And now that she's rich, she acts like I don't exist. He paused, wiping away what looked like a carefully timed tear. I don't even want her money. I just want her to acknowledge me as her son. In the comments, people lost their minds. This is heartbreaking. A mother like that doesn't deserve to be called one. You're so strong, Ethan. We're with you. She's a narcissist. Cut her out for your own healing. And of course, there were the donation links. Buy Ethan a coffee. Help him heal. Let us show Ethan some love his mother never did. Within days, his follower count skyrocketed. Brands started offering him sponsorship deals. Strangers sent him gifts. His tears turned into merchandise. Hoodies with slogans like "Unwanted but Unbroken" and "Mom never cared, but you do." It was so theatrical, I almost laughed. But what really stunned me was how many people believed him. My name, my photo, even the name of my gated community circulated online like wildfire. I had become the most hated mother on the internet. That evening, my lawyer called. We can file for removal, defamation, compensation, whatever you need, Linda. But I shook my head slowly. Not yet. He paused. You have a plan? Yes, I said quietly. It's time to speak. That night, I registered my own account on the same streaming platform. I titled the channel, "So This is the Mom Who Abandoned Ethan." No hashtags, no filters. Just a quiet thumbnail of me sitting by the window, sunlight behind me, face bare. Then I clicked Go Live. The viewer count trickled in at first, then doubled, then surged. I waited. And then, just as Ethan's live stream started, I jumped into his comment feed with a single donation, $5,000. The comment I attached? Hi everyone, I'm the heartless mother Ethan's been talking about. Come to my channel. I'll show you the whole truth, and yes, I'm giving away 100,000 tonight. First come, first served. His chat exploded. Viewers flooded my stream in waves. The comment section spun with lightning speed. Wait, she's live too? She looks calm. This is gonna be juicy. $100,000? I started with the basics. Yes, I cut Ethan off financially. No, it wasn't sudden. And it wasn't because I stopped loving him. It was because his entitlement became unbearable. I showed scanned trust documents, my name as the sole beneficiary to Catherine's $8 million estate. I was going to leave everything to Ethan, but the moment I stopped working, he and his wife threw me out of the very house I paid for. Gasps filled the chat. They called me a parasite, said I had no value unless I brought home a paycheck. And when I said I wanted to retire at 58, they told me to go clean floors at a nursing home. I uploaded screenshots, voice recordings, one of Ethan coordinating an interview, for me, to be a live-in assistant for another old man, like I hadn't served long enough. Then I paused, leaned closer to the camera. And here's the part none of you know. A beat of silence. Ethan was adopted. Chat froze, then exploded. Wait, what? No way. Explain. Now. I told them everything. The orphanage, the heart defect, the surgeries, the husband who left when I chose to keep him. I gave up my marriage, my body, my dreams. I worked 3 jobs to keep him alive. I bought him a house. I never told him the truth, because I didn't want him to feel unwanted. I wanted him to believe he was chosen. I wiped away a tear, not from weakness, but from exhaustion. And now he says I never loved him. To prove it, I posted hospital bills, tuition receipts, old photos of him sleeping in my lap while I sat in hospital corridors. The internet turned. She saved his life and he smeared her online? Unbelievable. This is what emotional abuse looks like. He's not heartbroken. He's broke and bitter. Then I dropped the final bomb, an official scan of the adoption certificate. Authentic, dated, stamped. Chat collapsed in disbelief. He lied about everything. Report him. Get his channel banned. She raised him from the dirt, and he buried her name. That night, Ethan's account was suspended. And my peace? It had finally begun. By the next morning, Ethan's streaming account had been permanently banned. The social media platform issued an official statement. Violations of community standards, defamation, and harassment. His donation portals were frozen. Sponsorships dropped him within hours. His name, once bathed in sympathy, now lit up every newsfeed as a cautionary tale. I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. Because some wounds don't close quietly. The moment the internet turned on Ethan, he vanished. Off social media, off the streets near my neighborhood, off the grid. But I wasn't done. I met with my legal team the same afternoon. We'll move forward with the lawsuit, I said. Defamation, emotional distress, damages, and most importantly, reclaiming the house. They nodded. For months, that house had haunted me, not just because of the memories, but because it stood as a symbol of how they'd used me, discarded me, and expected me to stay silent. They had registered the home under Ethan and Nicole's names, yes. But the money? Every last cent had come from me, and we had the bank records, transaction logs, and witness statements to prove it. Within weeks, the court issued an order to freeze the title deed. The investigation began in earnest. While all this unfolded, I stayed quiet, not hidden, just still. I spent my days in my new home by the lake, reading novels I never had time for, drinking coffee I brewed just for myself, watering flowers that bloomed without asking for anything in return. And then one morning, my lawyer called. It's done. The judge ruled in your favor. The house, the one I had cleaned, fixed, paid for, was finally mine again. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just packed a small bag and returned. Not to live, but to stand in the center of the living room, sunlight spilling across the floor, and finally breathe. I had exhaled. 2 days later, my lawyer informed me that Nicole had filed for divorce. According to court records, she had signed the papers in silence. No argument, no negotiation. She left Ethan with nothing. No home, no platform, no reputation, no one. I didn't ask where he went. I didn't care. Years passed. The internet moved on. The hashtags disappeared. People forgot about Ethan, the crying man on the screen, the tragic son with a hollow story. Then, one day, I ran into an old friend from the city. I heard Ethan moved to Canada, she said. Someone forwarded me a video. I think you should see it. I didn't want to look, but I did. And there he was, a blurry figure on a sidewalk, hunched next to a trash bin, chewing on what looked like stale bread. He was thinner, unshaven, dirty. Sometimes he laughed to himself, wild, manic laughter. Sometimes he cried, head buried in his hands like the world had broken him in half. And maybe it had. Or maybe he broke himself. I closed the video. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel pity either. He had made his choices. He had burned every bridge with gasoline and pride. And in the end, life did what it always does. It caught up. As for me, I sold the 2 villas I had bought on impulse, right before the housing market peaked. The profits were generous, and I used the money to build the life I'd once only dreamed of. A quiet town, a lakeside cottage, windows full of light, a garden of lavender and rosemary, a piano in the corner, and no one ever knocking to demand more. No one called me mom just to ask for something. No one called me selfish for wanting to rest. For the first time in my life, I belonged only to myself. Sometimes people still ask me, "Do you regret adopting him?" And I smile. No, I say. I don't regret it. I regret not understanding sooner that kindness should never come at the cost of your soul. I was never perfect, never a saint, but I became something better, a woman who finally lived for herself, and that, I learned, was more than enough. People stopped whispering. No more looks at the grocery store. No more strangers pretending not to recognize me. It was like the world had finally exhaled and let me be. But the scars didn't vanish overnight. There were still mornings I'd wake and instinctively listen for footsteps outside my door, for knocks demanding rent, groceries, help. Then I'd smile to myself, remembering I was no longer in that world. I was in mine. One morning, as I stood by my garden gate trimming roses, a woman I'd never seen before walked by slowly. She paused, glanced over at the blooms, then said softly, "You're her, aren't you?" I turned to look at her, unsure whether to nod or walk away. She smiled. "I saw your live stream. I was one of those people who believed him. But then, I watched your whole story. Twice." I waited. She stepped closer, her voice shaky. "My own son hasn't called me in 6 years. He blocked my number after I told him I couldn't pay off his second car. I thought I was the only one." She reached into her coat, pulled out a small paper envelope, and handed it to me. Inside was a short note. "Thank you for reminding me I'm not crazy, that it's okay to say no." I held it in both hands, tears rising in my throat. That was the beginning. Messages started coming in. Emails, letters, even postcards from women all over the country. Mothers, aunts, grandmothers, all carrying the same weight. Guilt that wasn't theirs, shame they didn't deserve. They called me brave. But I wasn't brave. I was just done. Done being used. Done being quiet. So I wrote back. Every time. I responded with warmth, with truth, with the one thing I had learned matters more than any inheritance or apology: boundaries, our love, especially the ones we draw for ourselves. Meanwhile, my story had become a case study. Law students cited it in discussions on financial abuse. Therapists used it in workshops about guilt-based manipulation. One professor reached out to ask if I would guest lecture on economic emotional labor in families. I declined gently. I wasn't ready to turn my pain into curriculum. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I was just trying to breathe. One night, as the sun dipped behind the lake, I opened my photo albums. I hadn't touched them in years. There he was, Ethan at 3 with a bowl of strawberries. Ethan at 8, winning a spelling bee. Ethan at 16, rolling his eyes but smiling when I tried to hug him in public. And then I closed the book, not out of anger, not out of hate, but because there comes a point when you stop rewriting the past and start living the life you've earned. Years passed. The house was quiet now, not the kind of silence that aches, but the kind that holds you, wraps around you like a soft quilt. I spent my mornings sipping strong coffee on the porch, watching light shift over the lake. I tended to my roses. I wrote in journals I never used to have time for. And every now and then, I played the piano just for me. No one knocked. No one shouted through a door. No one asked, "When can you send more money?" That silence, it wasn't loneliness. It was peace. I did not date. I didn't remarry. I wasn't looking to fill space. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. Not to a man, not to a child, not even to myself. I had given enough, and I had finally learned what no one teaches women like me. Rest is not a reward you have to earn. It is a right. One day, while shopping at the local bookstore, I passed by a shelf labeled Family and Forgiveness. There were titles like Letting Go of Resentment and Mending Broken Bonds. I paused, not out of curiosity, but out of recognition. There was a time I would have devoured every book in that section, desperate to fix something that wasn't mine to repair, to find the perfect words that might bring Ethan back. That might make him love me right. Now, I just reached for a different title, a novel, fiction, something that made me dream, not ache. As I walked to the counter, the young clerk smiled. "You look familiar," she said. "Were you on the news a few years ago?" I nodded gently. "Yes, that was me." She paused. Just wanted to say, I think you're amazing. My mom followed your story. She said it gave her the strength to finally say no to my brother. I smiled. Not wide, just enough. Thank you, I said. I didn't need more than that. Because the real ending wasn't in lawsuits or villas or live streams. It wasn't in Ethan's downfall or Susan's silence. It was here, in a life I built with no one's permission. A life where I woke up each morning and answered only to myself. A life where love wasn't a transaction. Where my worth wasn't measured in paychecks or guilt or how many times I bent before I broke. A life where I could finally say, I am enough. Sometimes I still get asked, do you ever miss Ethan? And I always answer honestly, I miss the boy I raised. The boy who clung to my neck when he was sick, who smiled at me with strawberry-stained lips, who held my hand too tight on the first day of school. But that boy is long gone, and I've made peace with his absence. Because not all stories end with reunion. Some end with reclaiming, and some of us, we don't need the happy ending we imagined. We just need the one we deserve. So here it is. I am Linda Turner, once a housekeeper, once a forgotten mother, now a woman who belongs to no one but herself. And that is more than enough.